So good morning. Guess I'll start out. You guys having a great time at InfoSec so far? You know, this is probably my favorite conference of the year because honestly, I look forward to the conversations that I have with you guys. Like, I actually get really thought-provoking conversations with you guys that you're constantly challenging yourselves, you know, looking what you can do, what's new out here. We have a lot of great vendors out here technology-wise. So this is definitely a different breed of people that come to InfoSec. So, you know, glad to be able to be up here and talk to you guys. For those of you that didn't meet me last year, haven't met me so far, my name's Chad Koslow. I'm CEO of Ridge IT Cyber. A little bit about my background: cut my teeth inside the intelligence community and DoD, building and maintaining complex enterprise systems and applications to support the global war on terror before going out and co-founding Ridge IT Cyber. Since then, maybe I should advance the slides. Since then, we've grown into a global MSSP. We have customers in 160 different countries across 6 different continents. We were named to Inc. Magazine 5,000 list of fastest growing companies, coming in the coveted Inc. 500 slot 2 years in a row. Plus, I'm definitely proud we've come in as the #1 MSSP on that list 2 years in running. Our big claim to fame is we've done over 1,000 zero trust related deployments over the last 3 years alone. And really what we've been up to at Ridge IT since I took the stage last year, pretty exciting stuff. On the federal side, we're implementing an ICAM solution for a federal agency that's going to impact 15 million users. Very exciting. Plus, we're doing a full ZTNA architecture for a federal agency to go out there and implement 152 of the DoD's zero trust controls. So that's the federal side of us, but the commercial side, can't leave them out. I'm super proud of these guys. So the last couple of years, we've been talking to our SMB customers, you know, seeing what the problems were out there. So this year, our team came together and we finally launched what we call the One Platform, which takes the Gartner leaders and all the security stacks and bundles it into a unified solution, where these solutions are actually integrated together, and therefore, you know, makes it easier for you guys to manage. Like, ideally, we do full management of the suite, but it also gives you the ability to co-manage that solution. But you guys didn't come here to listen to me talk about myself or Ridge IT, so let's just go ahead and jump into the subject matter and we'll go from there. I've been saying this for years, so as a lot of other people. Most of us in the room believe it's not if, it's when we're going to undertake a breach, and that's really a sad thing when you think about it. It's almost a defeatist attitude of, hey, look, I'm going to do my best, but eventually a breach is going to come, and that's going to be my day. I'm going to have to deal with it and work through that. And I think we're going to continue in that mindset until we change our approach to cybersecurity. Like, in my opinion, the way we approach everything is fundamentally flawed. You know, rather than looking at things of very objectively in nature, we're relying on the subjective nature of white papers or opinions, our colleagues and everything else, not exactly looking at what's best for Bob down the street in his organization may not be the best for my organization. So you don't know how it all fits together. You just don't know what you don't know. So until we change that mindset and find a way where we can evaluate our security stack day in and day out and understand how effective is my security solution today, and the days you start losing efficiency in that stack, what can I do to make it better? It might be a tool I bought 3 years ago. It was awesome. Today it's just not cutting, or it's not great for my organization because our mission's changed, our business needs have changed. We added applications, new sites, whatever it might be. We just don't understand that overall ROI that we're getting for our security stack. So this is how we all basically start out. We go out, we either inherit or we build a security stack inside there. And as time goes on, we got to change that stack. Either a better solution comes out, hey, we're told that budget needs to be cut, you need to rip something out, brand new mission, brand new level of threats, so we have to build that in there. So we just keep on changing our stack over and over again. You know, we're out there searching for the perfect tool, the perfect answer, the answer basically, you know, rather than looking into how can we make these solutions best for us. And unfortunately, this is the result of our labors. We work hard diligently over and over again, but this ends up what's happening to so many of us. So when you look at it, the way I look at it, when I used to manage servers and applications. Never once did I get an email saying, hey, Chad, thank you for having the Exchange server up for 364 days out of the year. But I can guarantee you the one email that I get that one time that Exchange server's down. We're really in a thankless job. You guys don't get emails day in and day out saying, hey, thank you for not making me have to talk to insurance auditors on this breach. Hey, thanks, I don't have to talk to law enforcement. Thanks, I don't have to deal with the FBI. Thanks, I don't have to testify in front of Congress. We don't get that, but I guarantee you, the one email you get, if you have a device or email to be able to get it, it's going to be a completely different story. So, and why is all that? We simply don't know what we don't know. We don't know how well these solutions actually work. We don't know how well it integrates into our business needs. And we don't know decisions we make further on, how it's going to impact the effectiveness of these tools inside of our environment. So what's good today may not necessarily be good tomorrow. And I'll touch on that. You'll actually see there's sometimes unintended consequences to trying to make things better inside of our organization. So until we start to know what we don't know, we're always going to be guessing and looking at things in a very subjective manner. So I'll highlight why the answer isn't so simple. So here's two Ridge IT clients. We'll just call them Client 1, Client 2, because I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. They're in the same exact industry, They're practically the same user count, plus or minus a couple percent, but over time it all balances out, but it's the same type of organization. They have the same types of customers, so they have the same business applications, the same needs. In some cases, they're in the very same customer. In a lot of ways, they're competitors to one another. They have the same types of users, and what I mean about it, we all know there's certain users more risky than others. There's industries that are more risky than others. So you look at that, we have the same education level, same professionalism, same training, all that. So basically say they're the same exact users. Many of them job hop between these two corporations. They have the same security stack. How do I know that? Ridge IT put it in. They have the same exact security configuration. That's what we believed, and then after I show you, we actually went back and double checked, and in fact, it was still the exact same security configuration. And they had the same MSSP, us. So as long as my people follow their policies and procedures, then we should be within a couple of percentage points of performance between Client A, Client 1 and Client 2. So what's the difference here? Client 1 had 364 detections in the past 12 months. Okay. Big size org makes sense. That's a lot of endpoints. Client 2 only had 29. Think about that. 364 detections versus 29 for basically the same exact organization. That's over a 1,200% increase. That is awesome if it's your stock portfolio. That should be terrifying if it's your security stack. So we went through what any rational human being would do. Let's start to look at this because it makes no sense. So we dug into Client 1. We double-checked the security stack configurations. We went through everything we were doing. We looked at us internally, but there's nothing we could possibly be doing that would be a 1,200% difference. So we go through this thought exercise, and we go over and over through it. And then finally, we're like, well, maybe it's not the security stack. Let's look at the company itself. So we looked at its configurations, we looked at its policies and procedures, and then we came to a couple things, but the number one outlier that made these two companies different, the one that gave you 364 detections and the other one gave you 29, do you guys have any idea what that is? One company gave users local admin rights on their machines, and they didn't have separations of duties for their admins. So their privileged users did their day-to-day work even when they weren't doing privileged activities, while Client 2 removed all local admin access to the machines, and they, from what we saw, maintained a separations of duties of I do privileged work here and unprivileged work, my day-to-day stuff on a different account, different machine, and so on and so forth. So after going through that thought exercise about 4 years ago, came to a point inside the company of I was given a choice. Give a bag of cash to the marketing department, watch them light it on fire, or we could go out and build a cyber range. Let's walk through this thought exercise we had. And so we decided, let's build a cyber range. Let's build out multiple zero trust environments in there. Let's go out and test what the world's telling us to do. So we built out a commercial zero trust range. We built out one for an IL2 FedRAMP versions of software. And then we're actively working on an IL4, IL5 military workload rated security stack to go through and test this. And our idea was, let's start looking how we can leverage the integrations between all these vendors to actually up the performance and actually do this defense in layers, defense in depth inside the organization. Understand what's available in commercial may not be available in FedRAMP, and definitely not available in the IL4, IL5 military cloud, but it gives us an idea of what's available, what's coming, what can we do today, and then further down the road when it becomes available, we can do that. And then let's start listening to our colleagues and all the thought papers and everything else, and let's implement this method of zero trust here, or approach. Let's implement these ideas, and then we're currently working on, hey, let's see how effective the DoD's 152 zero trust controls are in stopping threats. And then since we are there, why don't we build a product testing range on top of that? So at any given point in time, we could have 50 to 100 Windows devices inside there, all different builds. Some are patched, some have no vulnerabilities, some are partially patched. The idea was, hey, let's make this, if I went out to one of your companies, I might find this out there, a mixture of everything. So let's try to simulate the real world. I'm not looking for, all the way to the left and all the way to the right, but let's just see what we'd expect inside of an organization. And then let's start to apply some different hardening profiles inside the organization. And let's test all these products. Let's test the EDRs, the SASEs, and everything else. So before I move on, I'll tell you nothing in this world is static. The world evolves, the threats evolve, our security vendors evolve, the security products evolve, the security protections evolve. So just to highlight this, here are 4 random clients that we monitored their security stack, just pulled them out of random. You could see, you can't say, hey, I scored a 78% on my EDR and go do a victory lap and say I'm done. Because the very next month you could be at 47%. So what I'm saying is, what we tested here was the ability of these EDR solutions to block real-world threats, not only the threats, but the objectives. We didn't look at the complexities, the additional capabilities of the platforms, or anything else. We were just looking at this simple fact, what can we block and what we don't block? So it's only a single piece of this puzzle and shouldn't be relied on as 100%, hey, if I choose this, I'm solid. If I choose this, I'm in trouble. Because again, you have different mission needs, different applications, different business goals. So you really need to look at it holistically of what's best for you versus, hey, Bob's using this and he's never had a breach in the last 3 years. So diving into the numbers. So a little bit about this. These are just a couple EDR solutions that we looked at. Looked at the middle of the road solutions that they had. We implemented the basic default configuration or the best practices. Again, the idea was if I go to your office and you have one of these tools, most likely I'll see it like this configured. There are ways to turn these things up, make them super more powerful, but we all know we don't do that because users complain because it impacts performance and everything else. So operating under default or best practice configurations, that's what we went for here. We looked for these products to be equal in nature. I'm not looking to race a Ferrari against a Honda. It's not fun unless the Honda wins. So all of these are in line, very much the same. So the only other thing I'd throw out there, I threw this in because I was curious. The Defender that comes installed under default on Windows, I don't know what to call it because Microsoft calls everything Defender. They call everything E something, and I know they can count up to 5, E1, E3, E5. So what I have here is the free Defender that comes on your Windows device, and then I have Windows Defender Plan 2 in there. Not to be confused with the Defender that comes with Business Premium, because that performs completely different than all the other things. So again, here are just 2 different Windows ones, but hey, this comes free on every Windows device. Let's see how it stacks up. I've already told you, run everything in non-privilege, so if you don't believe me, this conversation isn't for you. So that's all I'm going to show you is data on how effective non-privileged users and devices are in this. So threats blocked. Immediately, we jump to the numbers, right? We have an answer. But if you look at it, everyone's in about the 90s percentile for threats blocked. And I'll also add, this is our broad endpoint test. So these are threats that have been out in the world for 2, 3, 4, 5 months. It's stuff, again, you guys probably see day in and day out. I'm not looking for this 0-day threat that just came out, been out for a couple weeks. This is established stuff. So it's given time for your vendors to actually tune their software, make those improvements, start looking for all those things. But the other interesting part is it's not just blocking threats. It's what were the objectives of these threats? And you could see the numbers are actually greatly different. We didn't block all the objectives, but we were able to determine this threat was blocked because when a ransomware or whatever attack got to what I'd say a milestone of, hey, this makes it a successful attack, we stopped it there. So there might have been a couple things in the kill chain that it was able to deploy load on your environment, do discovery, but it wasn't able to exfiltrate that data. So it was considered blocked. So again, even with numbers, it doesn't give you the whole story. So applied some very basic hardening standards that I think equates to, hey, it's great you have a security system. After you turn it on, why don't you walk around and make sure all your doors and windows are locked? So that was our approach to these hardening things. And look at the difference that we did, just a couple small things we did at the endpoint to harden these devices. We took these EDRs from 90 percentiles all the way up to almost 100 percentile. You even see that we increased the ability to block the objectives of some of these threats. So again, very interesting on itself. And now this is where I talk about the elephant in the room. I'm sure all of you saw me glossing over, not everything's 90%, not everything improved. So I'll say this right here. This is a spot in time. It could have been a software update, could have been a lot of things, but I looked at the data and you're like, oh, your tests are wrong, because that's what I thought. So we went through, we did it again, we looked at the devices and we determined, hey, let's get brand new devices. Let's load the hardening profile over again. So we did this over and over again and got the same exact results. So I don't think it's our testing process, but what I think it is our hardening. Going back to what's good for Bob and his organization may not be good for you and your security stack. So for Bob, we got him another 10 points of performance, but because you're using a certain solution inside your security stack, taking our hardening standards would actually make your security stack worse. So again, it's not as clear cut. The answer isn't so simple. Jumping in, well, unfortunately, we have 0-day threats and new threats, so we can't rely on, hey, stuff that's been out there. We don't operate of, hey, we unplug our computer for 4 months until, one of our EDR platforms, our security vendor, gets their software up to date. So these are the most recent threats, vary in age, but they're new out there. That's what our environment's looking at. You can see we dropped from a 90% average down to 60 or so, or 55% of threats blocked. And you can see, surprisingly, the objectives that we were able to block maintained strong, if not went up. So again, it's not as clear cut as blocking the threats and blocking objectives. It's so much different data in choosing and configuring your security stack. So stayed down the path again, looked at the differences, and lo and behold, it's very similar to the recent attacks. Our hardening profiles, we were able to increase the performance of this just a little bit, and honestly, a little extra work that you have forever for another 5-10% performance, it's just so worth it. It's a minimal investment considering what we pay in licensing fees. So you can see we still have our outliers, the performance of these systems, but for the most part, this hardening standard was good for these solutions. So again, you need to kind of look at it as one piece of the data out there. So we talked about all this, how you can't rely on number of threats blocked and the objectives. Jumping into it, it could all be a mirage in a lot of ways, because this is just EDR. You may have compensating controls inside your organization to overcome some of these objectives. It may be how you're configured out there, where you're not so worried about establishing persistence. And so you really need to look at what are we operating as a company to go through to be able to say which of these objectives is actually more dangerous for me. Meanwhile, Bob's able to skip on by it like it's not a big deal. Like, lateral movement, for example. If we're all working telework, it doesn't matter if I have lateral spread and I infect my son's gaming box, but if I'm in the office and I'm directly connected to our mission critical applications inside the server room, you might be worried about a lateral spread a lot differently. So again, the way you guys are configured, the way your network's set up, the way your applications are, the way you access your data, these different things will impact you differently. You have to remember, while all vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities, not all vulnerabilities are exploitable inside your organization. So it's looking at which of this matters, so that you really need to dig into the performance to these and say, what's the better tool for me? It doesn't matter how many threats were blocked. Ideally, we want it at 100%, and then we're not even talking about this. But we already know that isn't the case here when we look at stuff. So what I hope you can take away from this is you can't rely on your tools alone. You need to do a little due diligence. You need to help your tools work together, build a better perimeter around your data, around your users, and around your devices. So you need to go out there and do the little extra lift to give a couple more percentage points. Imagine you do something here and you increase your EDR solution by 10 points. Do something over here, increases your edge by a couple points. Hey, I do this over here, I increase my gateway by a couple more points. Before you know it, you're almost added up to a whole nother security solution that is now inside your stack, and you built that homegrown just by doing some best practices out there. So want you to remember, what's good for Bob may not necessarily be good for you. So you take our hardening profile, very basic in nature, apply it to your environment, could have unintended consequences. So you really need to work with a partner who understands the ins and outs of cybersecurity, because the smallest little details matter. It doesn't matter if the threat's blocked or the objective's blocked. You need to look at what objectives we're able to run inside your environment. That's where your true risks are. You can look at them as an outlier, basis of data of, hey, this solution's only blocking 10% threats, then you probably have a huge problem. But if you're performing in range and pack with everyone else, you just need to look at things differently. So when you work with your professionals, when you work with your team, you really need to look at it and be like, how can we evaluate our stack day in and day out and squeeze that little extra performance out of there? So with that, thank you for your guys' time. I hope you found it informative. We're at booth 102, right when you walk onto the left. Love to continue this conversation, help you guys out. But, thank you for having me at InfoSec second year in a row. Thank you, guys.